Bashar al-Assad's Syrian regime has fallen. What happened? And what will this mean for the future of the Middle East and the world? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Well, it's finally over. After more than 13 years of fighting, the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has collapsed. This marks the end of the dynasty that's ruled Syria since 1971 and one of the longest and deadliest conflicts in recent memory. So how did this happen? Flashback to 2011 when protests erupted in Syria against the authoritarian government of President Assad. Protesters demanded an end to the extreme censorship, arrests, mass corruption, and nepotism which defined life under Assad and the Alawite religious minority who had controlled Syria since Assad's father took power in the 1970s. This was part of the wider Arab Spring and resulted in deadly crackdowns. Thousands were killed. And by 2012, tensions boiled over into a civil war. An insane number of armed groups, from the Western-backed Free Syrian Army to Kurdish rebels to jihadist militias like Al-Qaeda, exploded in the country's north and southwest. Assad's Syrian Arab army was caught completely off guard and retreated to the capital Damascus and the Alawite heartland in Syria's western coast. Things only got worse when, in 2013, ISIS emerged along Syria's border with Iraq and conquered huge swaths of both countries over the following year. Assad was up against a wall, and his demise was all but certain. But in 2015, two new players stepped in to help: Russia and Iran. Russia's Air Force devastated rebel-controlled cities alongside the private military company Wagner. At the same time, thousands of Iranian-backed Hezbollah fighters flocked to Syria to help stabilize the flailing regime. In 2017, Assad's forces began to push back. With Russian and Iranian help, as well as President Trump's bombing campaign against ISIS, Assad had retaken most of his lost territory. However, he was forced to stop just short of taking the northern city of Idlib, which Turkey had offered its protection. Likewise, Kurdish forces remained in control of the country's northeast, along with its vast oil reserves. By the end of 2019, large-scale fighting had ended. Syria's economy was devastated. Its territory was divided. Over 600,000 had died, with more than 6.5 million Syrians becoming refugees abroad. From Assad's standpoint, there was little he could do to rebuild the country. With much of the oil still in Kurdish hands, Syria was broke. Unable to pay the army, tens of thousands of Syrian troops were demobilized. Those who remained faced low pay and low morale. And corruption continued to plague the Syrian army. Officers maintained a series of military checkpoints across Syria, extorting vast sums of money from any citizen wishing to pass through. But that's not even the half of it. Courts and prisons continued to extract bribes from those facing detention. Pro-regime forces trafficked in drugs, weapons, and even human beings. They even went so far as to destroy bakery ovens so that stolen bread could be sold for a profit on the black market. There was no reform within Syria. The country was broken and its people hated Assad more than ever. In late November of this year, rumblings of war resurfaced in the north. This time, the fight was led by the group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a U.S.-designated terrorist group formerly associated with Al-Qaeda. Its leader, al-Jilani, was the former head of al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda's official branch in Syria. He even worked alongside ISIS until disagreement over leadership caused a split between the two groups. Now, al-Jilani says this is a kinder, gentler sort of jihad, one which believes diversity is our strength. So what, we have to deal with DEI terrorists now? And I thought the HR departments in this country were bad. What does DEI even stand for? Diversity, equity, and impaling heads on sticks? Anyway, we may just have to take al-Jilani's promises with a tiny little Syrian desert-sized pinch of salt. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights has already alleged horrific atrocities committed by al-Jilani's forces against Kurdish civilians. This makes sense since the entire point of having Turkish-backed rebels in Syria is to prevent the Kurds from forming their own independent country, which would include large parts of Turkey. Still, Kurdish forces joined Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in their lightning offensive against Assad as they raced down towards the capital. Sweeping aside what little resistance remained, another rebellion popped up in the country's south. Again, Assad's back was against the wall, but this time, nobody was coming to help. Russia has been a little occupied in Ukraine as of late. Its private military, Wagner, largely ceased to exist following its failed coup attempt and the assassination of its leaders by Vladimir Putin. Hezbollah also is tied up at the moment. They're trapped in a war with Israel and Lebanon. Exhausted and demoralized, Assad's Syrian Arab army vanished. In less than 2 weeks, rebels captured Syria's capital city, Damascus. Syrian state television declared the victory of the Great Syrian Revolution and the overthrow of the Assad regime. So what happens now? Well, most of Assad's forces have either surrendered or ditched their uniforms and melted back into the public. Even the Alawites' coastal heartland has been rapidly swept up in the rebels' advance. Their ultimate fate is so far unclear. Russia, of course, is getting out while it still can. Their bases remain on high alert, though no serious threats have been reported. Airlifts moving Russian military equipment, personnel, and civilians out of the country were spotted earlier this week. This marks the end of Russian involvement in Syria as well as much of the world. France is certainly happy, as Syrian airports were the main hub by which Russia moved its forces to and from Africa, where Russia and France have been battling for influence over France's former colonies. Iran, likewise, has all but abandoned Syria, with its few remaining Hezbollah forces coming under fire by Israel while fleeing back into Lebanon. For now, the Islamic Republic seems content to lick its wounds and refocus efforts on developing more advanced long-range missiles, and even nuclear weapons. Donald Trump, meanwhile, has washed his hands of the whole thing, saying that this is not our fight and that America should not get involved. Also, that all this did was make Obama look really stupid. The Syrian people, of course, will continue to suffer. 13 years of war and devastation have left Syria crippled. It's unknown just how many Syrians living abroad will want to return to the ruins of their homeland and help rebuild. And while we can't say for sure how well al-Jilani's Islamic militants will govern, history tells us it probably won't be good, no matter their supposed love for diversity. What's more, ISIS has found new life amidst the chaos. And while the Kurds have taken unprecedented amounts of territory and control much of Syria's oil wealth, the future may not be so bright. They remained surrounded by enemies on all sides, and I'm not sure how interested al-Jilani's Islamic militias are interested in sharing. But finally, what about Assad? Where is Syria's former president? His wife and 3 children fled to Russia, while his 2 brother-in-laws sought refuge in the United Arab Emirates. Some believe Assad also fled to Russia or Iran. Some say his plane was shot down. Others believe he still may be in Syria, hiding in an underground spider hole like fellow dictator Saddam Hussein before him. But maybe, just maybe, this was all a distraction. Maybe Assad managed to disguise himself as an old lady and hide inside a box of figs pulled by a donkey to the port of Latakia. There, he boarded a Russian submarine captained by none other than Wagner's Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is not dead, and all sailed the way to a beach in Argentina, where he was greeted by Argentine President Captain Anarcho-Capitalism. And there, he lives to this day, sipping Mai Tais along JFK, Jeffrey Epstein, and a 134-year-old Adolf Hitler. Wait, what's that, Shelley? Oh, it's been reported that Assad has arrived in Moscow, where he's been granted asylum. Okay, instead of Mai Tais on the beach, make that Moscow Mules at the Four Seasons. In any case, we here at America Uncovered want to express our deepest sympathy for the people of Syria and all those affected by war. With this stage of the war heading towards its final conclusion, we can only hope that it isn't merely the beginning of another. Episodes like this wouldn't be possible without your support. Instead of clicking to the next video, head over to our new premium website at ChinaUncensored.tv. There's a lot of great exclusive stuff you can only see on the website, and you'll be helping me continue to get the truth out about all the most important breaking news. More info is in the description below. So head over to ChinaUncensored.tv and become one of our first premium subscribers. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you on the other side.